Okay, so welcome along to Sega Does episode 42. I'm your host, Sam the Pixel Dude, and joining me for a lot of flying this week in various guises from the future and the past and the present day, we have Dylan Cornelius. How are we doing, Dylan?
Doing well. Just one step away from our pilot's license, isn't that right?
We should have done this we didn't get around to this when Top Gun Maverick was coming out, but Top Gun Maverick was coming out for about 2 years, so we couldn't really time it very well. So anyway. Yep. What have we got today? Well, we got an awful lot of Genesis, Mega Drive stuff we're talking about today. A lot of stuff that involves you flying, which is always good because you don't have to animate anything. Yay!
Yeah, that's true.
So the first game we have today is a game that I hadn't heard of at all until we started doing this. It is Air Diver.
Well, when I wrote the review for this game, it's apparent the internet hadn't heard much about it either, because when I was looking for information, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. This game came out in the States. Like, it wasn't like a Japanese exclusive.
No.
But, yeah.
It came out it came out roughly about the same time, around mid-90s. I've got these dates. So is that 03? Is that class? That is your?
Oh yeah.
That's your month, isn't it?
Our American dating system.
Yeah, that's
crazy
month.
Americans.
So they only came out a month apart, is what I'm trying to say. From the Japanese to the US.
Correct. Yep.
Correct. Yes. So this is, basically it's an Afterburner clone, really, kind of, in the style of gameplay. The problem is, it's terrible.
Yeah, they spent an inordinate amount of time detailing the cockpit.
The cockpit.
They were really excited
wow.
to just, all of the dials and the gizmos and
which you don't use.
It's just so good, right? But then you play, and it's just pretty generic. It's planes fly up to you, you fight them, you shoot them down, or they shoot you down. There's a lot of little details that, again, because the internet didn't have much information on this at the time, I wasn't 100% sure what they meant. So like before each mission, you're given a map showing you where you're going to go.
Yeah.
And it'll say in the upper right-hand corner, area data, attack 400, defense 350. What does that mean? I don't know. It doesn't.
No context.
Doesn't really matter in the long run, because again, you're just shooting things. But I wish I would have had a little more information. But again, doesn't really matter. This is, as Sam says, it's an Afterburner clone. But what if you were in the cockpit instead of behind the plane? Is the viewpoint wise?
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, pretty much. There's a bit of strategy where you have to. Yeah, you have to at certain points. I think it's mostly in later levels. You have to
Oh, you have to play it then. Okay, that's a problem.
You have to play it. Yeah, you have to play the game, and then you can. Or you have to refuel, so you have to attach yourself to a fueling jet.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
No. And then for me, where I really got stuck was when suddenly you're doing battle against these huge alien ships. It basically stops the whole game. They just come onto your screen really slow.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Star Fox-esque boss battle sort of thing.
Yep. And then I could never dodge their stuff at all. I was just I guess I'm just gonna die, and I did.
Yeah, that was the main problem with me with it, is there is no feel or sense of place with the controls. You can't feel where you are when you're moving around. There was no reaction. The reaction was poor from your fingers to the screen, and just didn't feel like you was connecting with anything. It was just pretty terrible, really. It's it's a pretty bad way to go in terms of other stuff that was out at the time, which we'll be talking about soon. But I just have a hatred for flying games in this time period. They just don't work. They needed 3D graphics for flying games to work.
Right.
And it just doesn't work. I mean, you could get away with racing games just about at this time if you did them right, but flying, like air combat stuff, just was not my jam back in this time.
Yeah, agreed. And you can, like, if you go through the Sega Does library and you go back to the Master System, there was a game, I want to say it was like F-15 Fighting Falcon or something like that. I'm probably getting that name right.
No, I think that's about right.
The worst game. It was so bad. The frame rate was non-existent. Like and both on the Master System and the NES. The NES had a surprising amount of flight sim type games, and they're all just terrible because
they couldn't do it.
They couldn't do it, and so yeah, I'm in 100% agreement. I mean, and the games we'll get into one of these games, but they either needed to be in 3D, the flight sims, or flight style games in general needed to be in 3D, or they needed to be in the arcade, where you could just kind of get lost in the experience and you didn't really notice the game as much. Like you're just like, yeah, this is great, like Space Harrier, something, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, Air Diver,
not great. Sean697 here says I rented this and beat it when it came out. Wow. It was okay. I seem to remember some fuel management aspects to it as well. Like you had to tackle missions somewhat strategically. Yeah, I just didn't think it was good enough to warrant the time needed. Josh Dykeman, this game never appealed to me. I remember seeing screenshots and thinking to myself, there is almost no playfield to observe. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you want to go see what this game looks like, check out Sega Does, read the review, you can read the comments, leave yourself a comment, and you can see from the screenshots that, as we described, the cockpit, I mean, is very impressive, but it literally is 3/4 of the screen, and maybe that's what doesn't help. It kind of detaches you from like the area you are flying around because you can't see much of it. It's crazy. Raymond here says you actually can hold up and press the dash twice to turn 360 degrees, making an up twirl, thus escaping the arseholes on your six. It leaves them right in front of you. Yeah, I could never figure out what was going on to be that invested in it. That's kind of crazy. But that's useful to know if you really wanted to invest your time in Air Diver. Okay.
He was definitely referencing a part in the review when I said I couldn't escape some of the planes.
Yeah.
And again, this wouldn't have been a problem if I could have found like controls, like an FAQ or someone posting the English manual online, but there was none of that at the time in 2016. Now maybe. But I'm not playing it again. Once is enough.
Now this is going to be interesting because I haven't looked at your review for this game. Next we have Target Earth or Assault Suite Lenos,
yeah,
something like that. This is a weird one. Now, I'm going to admit, straight off the bat, I haven't played this because for some reason my version, in air quotes, of this game would not work. But it kind of looks like something I'd be interested in. But from the very brief discussion we had just before coming on to record this, Dylan kind of made it seem like that wouldn't be the case. So what have we got here then, Dylan? Can you sum Target Earth up for us?
I hate this game.
Cool.
I hate it because it's one of those games that is really short, and as a result, it's really hard. So, like, the difficulty is ramped up because each level is can be accomplished in 2 minutes or less.
Right.
But because there's only 8 levels, so you got it's little over 15 minutes of gameplay.
Yeah.
They just had to ramp it up. So, okay, so basic gameplay. You're this mech. You're known as an assault suit, hence the Japanese title. And your goal is to just fight off alien forces, robots, and other things, and defend Earth. You do have, to the game's credit, you are able to take 6 weapons with you into each stage, which is awesome. You can switch between them on the fly. There's, so it's not like a shoot 'em up where you can only hold like 1 or 2 at a time.
No.
So that's kind of nice, but my gosh, like the amount of enemies they put at you, they throw at you is just absurd. Like it is. And okay, so on top of that, you only have 1 life and 2 continues.
Yeah.
So basically 3 lives. Why they didn't just give you 3 lives and no continues? So then you just it's just a little weird. Now that being said, again, like this game has some like cool things going for it. Its execution is not great, right?
No.
So
looks nice.
It looks nice. It incorporates a regenerating life bar.
That's early, isn't it? Yeah.
1990. That's pretty good. And after each level, you're given kind of a player evaluation, kind of like a score thing, which is something I noted in the review. It would kind of become a crucial mechanic in like survival horror games, specifically like Resident Evil and stuff. Like, if you beat it in this amount of time, you get an S rank.
It gives you an actual grade, not just a score total.
I honestly can't remember. But I do know that it does that. So basically, the more points you get, the more armor and weapons are available for you in the next stage.
All right, so it's not just look how many points I scored, which was pretty much every score in games up to this point. It was actually kind of like an XP system almost.
Indeed. And both of those things, the life bar and the player evaluation, very ahead of their time, very interesting. Attached to a game that most people, even back in the day when gamers were a lot more receptive to difficulty, I don't think many enjoyed this one. And actually, as we get to the comments, you will see.
One thing I will say.
Oh, go ahead. Yep.
Awesome music.
Yeah, music was solid. It's that kind of bait and switch where it's like you want to play this because the soundtrack's so good.
It is really good.
You want to like get into it, but it's just too much. Bruce says this title was so unforgiving as a kid. I don't recall if I ever beat the game, but that box art will forever haunt or taunt me. So that's what he says. Sean697. I so wanted to like this game. Remember, it's an early title, so it looked like an amazing premise at the time, but the only way to survive it is to do well on the stages. I could never get past level 3.
Right.
Johnny Scott says, I really like this game when it was first released, as long as you use the cheat code so you can't die.
That'll help, yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much everybody except for the very last comment found this game too difficult. This guy, I'm not going to read it because it's like about as long as my review.
That is an essay. Wow.
Yeah. He said it. My review is off base, along with some of the comments that he doesn't even know where to start. So he did the best he could. I admire his passion. So, but this game, this is another thing about this game, became a series.
Right.
So, which I found interesting because this game released for a console that did crappy in Japan.
Right.
I guarantee this game didn't do well here, and a lot of the sequels were either renamed something completely different and didn't release here, or just, they just didn't show up in America or Europe at all. It was very Japanese. However, there is a PS4 remake of this game.
What?
Yeah, it came out in 2016. And apparently it has decent scores, so if you really want to check it out, there is that option, but I wouldn't recommend it. I can't do it. Innovation aside, there's nothing here worth coming back to.
Innovation, is that the name of the game in the next game? Because we're getting into sequel territory.
Yeah, I know.
Which is like a new kind of thing in gaming around the turn of the decade. You had your franchises in the mid and late 80s, and all of a sudden it's like, well, we can make another one of these because the name has cachet. So
Indeed.
we are now going to talk about what should be like a really big like headliner game, but actually for me falls kind of flat, and that's Afterburner 2.
Afterburner 2.
Yeah, Afterburner 2. Now, haven't got the biggest passion for flight combat games in 16-bit, as we've previously discussed.
As we've discussed, yeah.
I don't like this. I don't like it at all. Basically, it is a sequel, which I believe was console only. I don't believe there was an Afterburner 2 in the arcades, or am I wrong?
You're not wrong, and also I would say this game is more of a sequel, like Street Fighter 2 Turbo or Super Street Fighter 2 is a sequel to Street Fighter 2. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this game, I believe, was only released to semi-show you that arcade games can kind of run on your Genesis. Would you agree with that?
100%, because the Master System version of Afterburner... I mean, impressive for what it was, but not great. Not great. It's like, yeah.
That Master System version of Afterburner was purely designed for a generation where you can't see, like nowadays when you like, oh, I'm interested in a game, you go on YouTube and you can see it moving and you're like, oh yeah, that looks good, that looks bad. Back when Afterburner for the Master System came out, there was no way to see just how bad that game ran unless you plonked down 40 quid, bought it, and put it in your Master System. And then went,
that's true.
So I think that game was purely designed to catch people out, and maybe, hopefully, they wouldn't return it. I think that's... Or a Christmas present sort of thing. Oh, Johnny loves playing Afterburner in the arcade. Oh, look, he's got a Master System. There's a version on the Master System. Let's buy that. And you can't send your presents back to Santa because he doesn't take returns, so it would probably stay.
So Johnny made Afterburner work for him. That's how games worked back then. Like, you get a game and it might suck and you might know it sucks, but by gar, you're gonna try and just make it work. Do the best. Can you
remember any games from your youth that specifically stick out in your mind that you did that with? I can remember some PlayStation titles. It wasn't so bad on the Super Nintendo because I kind of I looked out, I think, pretty much there. But I can remember a few on the PlayStation.
Yeah, I remember Mission Impossible on N64, which was a hotly anticipated title that fell very flat.
It was a big deal.
But yeah, I remember trying my best to get through that game, and that game is insane. How about you? What are your PlayStation games?
One that sticks out to mind is Wild 9 on the PS1.
Oh, that was another anticipated game back in the day.
I bought the hype. Yeah, DualShock had just come out, and it was like, oh, you can feel and you can use force and with the analog sticks and throw people around, and it feels like you're throwing them around with your controller, which you didn't. It just felt like you was moving your thumb and your phone was vibrating. That's what it felt like.
Wasn't that Shiny's follow-up to Earthworm Jim 2? Or did they have another game in between?
They had MDK. They did MDK. I think Wild 9 was their first console exclusive, because I believe it was PS1 only.
Okay.
They did a few. They did MDK. They did They did that. They did a few things. Yeah. Poor old Shiny. Yeah. So anyway, Afterburner 2. I can't play this Afterburner was in a band of games that used Sega's patented superscalar technology in the arcades. There was and there was a few racing games and a few stuff like that. I find all of them pretty much unplayable. If I'm honest with you, I don't. There was this is my Sega card's going to get turned up. What's the game with the dude flying around shooting?
Space Harrier?
There you go, Space Harrier.
Yeah.
Why can't I remember that? And Space Harrier 2 was an exclusive for the Genesis. There you go. I got my card back.
There you go.
I just don't like them. I find them unwieldy. I find them kind of pointless games. I can't play them. They're just too fast.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no connection with what you're doing. It almost seems like luck if you get to the end of the stage. They're not very skill based to me. They purely are designed to be flashy, and that's it.
I agree with that. I mean, I think what I find in most of these, and I'm looking at my score. It's like I gave it a B. That's insane.
Wow.
I wouldn't do that these days. But I find them fun for like 5 to 10 minutes, actually enjoyable for 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'm like, oh, it's just the same thing over and over again, except harder each time. And I'm not in a cabinet that's like flailing my body around and blasting me with music. So that, I think, out of all the arcade ports, I think Afterburner, like home ports, I think the Afterburner and Space Harrier fared like among the worst. Even if they didn't play terrible, they're designed to be more rides, right? Like they're designed to be more like.
You know what? I was looking for a way to describe these games. I'd never thought of it that way before, but that is perfect. They are rides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's weird because like Hang On was designed that way too, but you can play it without the full-on motorcycle cabinet.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know why. Maybe it's just when you're a kid and your senses are just overwhelmed by the huge screen,
the interactivity,
everything,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you disliked it more than I did, for sure. I mean, I think I enjoy it for what it is, but at the same time, I can understand why Sega just. I mean, in my research for a lot of Sega does, I've never seen like ads hyping Afterburner 2, if that makes sense.
No.
Like it was just like
Space Harrier 2
game.
was pushed hard.
Space Harrier 2 was pushed.
Yeah, but not Afterburner.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. So not really a lot to say about that, really. So we've got some comments. I mean, everyone knows what Afterburner is. It's pretty basic, and this is like a version of Afterburner. It doesn't run as good, hasn't got as many sprites on the screen. The music kind of sucks compared to the arcade, and you're not being thrown around like John Connor in Terminator 2. So it doesn't really work. No.
Well, not getting thrown around like John Connor, but in our next game, you might get bounced around like Sugar Ray Leonard, right?
Yeah.
I want you to talk about this a little bit, and then I'll give my thoughts. But okay. If I'm not mistaken, you enjoy boxing, right?
I do enjoy boxing.
Okay.
I did not enjoy James Buster Douglas knockout boxing at all. I'm a bit of I'm not going to say I used to be a boxer, because that's wrong, because that implies like I was a professional boxer, which I was not. But I was a member of an amateur boxing gym, and I have had a few fights. And I'm not going to say I won them all, but I didn't lose them all either. So, and I do like boxing history, specifically 90s. Middleweight and heavyweight stuff was the best time for boxing. Everyone says, "Oh, the golden generation was in the 60s and 70s." No, it wasn't. Actually, the best boxing generation was in the 80s and the 90s by far. You just had so much stuff going on with Hagler Hearns and sort of Sugar Ray and all stuff like that, and then you get to the heavyweights and you've got Holyfields and Tysons and Buster Douglas, who came along for about 18 months and lit the world on fire and got himself a game out of it. Now, if you don't know who Buster Douglas is, that's not completely misunderstanding. It is for mine and Dylan's age group, which it is 2023 now, and we are in our late 30s. I think most people our age know who Buster Douglas was. Do you think that?
I would say if they had even like a peripheral eye towards sports, which is all I ever had. I was not a sports guy in any capacity, so yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah. Tell him what he did. Why is he known at all?
Well, Buster Douglas is known because he was the first guy ever to beat Mike Tyson.
Yeah. Yep.
And that is why he's famous. He flew over to Japan. Nobody gave him a prayer in the world, and in fact, to that date, for a heavyweight championship bout, and I believe this is still the case, he had the longest odds of anybody in a heavyweight championship bout ever.
Wow.
I think they were like, one place was given about 400 to 1 or something crazy like that. It was in the hundreds to 1.
Wow.
They did. Yeah, people don't understand. It's the same thing I say about Michael Jackson. People don't understand the whole Michael Jackson thing nowadays, but if you was in it, you understood it. And Mike Tyson was the same sort of whirlwind phenomenon. People watched Mike Tyson fights not to see if he won, but to see how quick the other guy lost. They were 90-second, 2-round maximum, just glorious events. And also you watch to see what kind of crazy stuff Tyson would get up to on his way to the ring, on his way out of the ring.
Right.
He might eat a guy, he might take a referee out.
Right.
You just had no idea. You didn't know who was coming down to the ring with him. It was amazing. It was a great time to be a sports fan, and they were huge events. Now, there was lots of things going on in Tyson's life at the time, and he was not being taken care of in the best manner, and that showed in his fight against Buster Douglas. Now, to be fair, Douglas beat the you-know-what out of him. He absolutely smashed him.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people say he smashed him because Tyson wasn't on his A game, which is a fair synopsis of the situation. But a lot of people don't remember is Douglas's mother died about 3 weeks before the fight.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No, and a lot of people didn't know that either. And he kind of used that as his inspiration. He was a religious guy, and he used that and his faith, and somehow he beat the Iron Mike Tyson, and that is why he got his own game.
Nice.
So now we're back round to the game. So, this game is absolutely terrible. It is bad. It is at this point, there are some good boxing games. I mean, you've obviously got the Punch-Outs of the world. Super Punch-Out was on its way. Fighting games were kind of coming along. You could fight in 16-bit and it was good. The lovely phenomenon of 16-bit and 32-bit games is everybody had their own take on how to do like a fighting game or a racing game, and people just, it wasn't like nowadays. If you pick up a controller nowadays and you play a first-person shooter, you can pretty much figure out 90% of the buttons instantly.
Right.
When you picked up a game back in the early 90s, it took you half a day to figure out what all the buttons did, because it would be guaranteed completely different to any other game that you picked up.
Yeah,
it was great.
True.
I can't figure out quite what this game wants you to do in terms of fighting, because the controls are not well telegraphed to you at all. There is only one named fighter in the game, and that is Buster Douglas. I believe there are only 5 fighters. All the others are made up. Stereotype. There's a Japanese guy, there's a Mexican guy who's called Gomez, there's a Japanese guy called, I think he's called Han, and I can't remember them all. But yeah, this is not a great game. It was in Japan called Final Blow, I believe.
Final Blow. Yep.
Oh yeah, it's right. I got that right. I don't even believe Douglas was in that one.
No.
It was a case of, as we had last week with what was the basketball game called?
Oh, Super Real Basketball.
Yeah, Super Real, and then they stuck who on the front in the States?
Pat Riley. The coach.
The coach. Yeah, and this was the same thing as they did here. They stuck Buster Douglas on the front of this game with a better photo than than the one.
Yeah, that's
that
true.
Pat Riley got. Not the best, he's not like mid punch. I mean, I would suspect they would want the one of him knocking Tyson out, but I also suspect that there's no way Tyson was going to give them the rights to use a photo of him getting his ass handed to him on the cover of a game.
That's probably accurate. Yeah, that's probably accurate.
Or he would have for a very large fee. So what do we think then, Dylan? I've kind of said, I mean, there's not a lot to it. The control's awful. It's really difficult. Doesn't look great. It looks dirty and kind of grimy. What do we think?
Well, this is, I think we've come to the first game on the Sega Does podcast where I farmed this review out to somebody else.
Right.
To his name is Peter Scarrett, and he's written for many publications back in the day, but he was really known for his love of like retro sports games, which is why I hired him to review this one.
Nice.
And he didn't like it either. So I thought
D+.
So I thought, well, if he doesn't like it, I know I'm not going to like it.
No.
So the thing that comes to mind is the Master System version of Rocky. Do you remember that one? Where I believe there's only 3 fighters or 4 that, and
I think there's 3. I think you're right.
Yeah, and from the get-go, it's brutal. Like, it is so tough, and I remember people were upset at the grade I gave it back in the day, but I'm like, no, man. It's
terrible.
And
it is the Rocky 5 of.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. There's no comeback yet. There's no Rocky Balboa yet, so it's just Rocky 5. Anyway, yeah, so I probably should have played it. I'll be honest. I apologize. Should have played it for this, just for kicks, Not anything, but I didn't miss anything, it sounds like. So
it was. You know how Rocky was like completely uneligible of like what the hell you were doing? Like the buttons didn't seem to do what buttons do in games. This was pretty much exactly the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, they did. I mean, there was a way. I kind of figured out eventually what happened when you did like a forward and A and back and A and things like that. I suspect it's actually quite a technical system, but I was not prepared to put the time.
Yeah.
So that's what happened there. So we've got some comments here. Let's have a look. Old school player. What about the Master System version? The #1 rarest Master System game released in America. I didn't know there was one, but I'm assuming we're going to get to it. That's going to be interesting. Brett Brown says, I remember this game being heavily featured in Sega Does commercials. Yes, it was. Sega Does. God. Genesis Does commercials. Too far in. Was a huge disappointment. Sega in the States threw money at people to get licenses, which worked. And we've seen 2 already, and we've got a very famous singer coming up soon. I have that highlighted. I can't wait. And the game actually isn't too bad. It's got some weird aspects to it, which with time have only got worse.
Whoever might you be referring to? Yeah,
I don't know.
Must be Sonic.
Must be Sonic. Yeah. He wasn't always blue. We've got Just Eicherman here. It's interesting that until Ready to Rumble boxing many years later, nothing could even hold a candle to Punch Out. That's true. Punch Out kind of reigned boxing games. I wouldn't say Ready to Rumble took it off him. There were some Knockout Kings games that came out later.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
which were really good. That's when I first started playing boxing games. But Ready to Rumble was actually quite. It was more arcade. Well, I suppose this is arcadey. Yeah, Ready to Rumble on Dreamcast. I remember that being a big deal.
Yep, it was. Out of the 35 launch titles, Ready to Rumble had quite the ad campaign behind it. Yeah.
Okay, so next up we have. I'm going to say straight out of the bat because this is just what I thought of instantly and I can't get it out of my head. We have the Silver Surfer of space shooters so far. We have Darwin. Now, is it us? I am going to assume it's meant to be 4081.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, not 4081. That's a bit weird. 4081, right. This is a space shooter. Top-down space shooter. Travel along. You go up and down the screen. Well, up the screen. Not left to right. And it is unbelievably difficult and terrible. There we go. We're done. No, we're not done. If anyone's ever seen the Angry Video Game Nerd review of Silver Surfer, and obviously Dylan has played Silver Surfer because he is the NES Encyclopedia. That is just what this reminds me of so much. Even down to the fact that the ship is pretty much the same shape as the Silver Surfer's board in that game. Along with the instant deaths, the one-hit deaths, the why did you put that there? There's no way you just trapped me there on the screen. Like pieces of scenery and enemy placement. Somebody had an idea, just let's make a space shooter, and they didn't design it. And this is what happens when you don't design things properly. How do you feel, Dylan?
Okay, well, yes. Well, you know what? I'm going to give a little bit of a background. Okay, so this is a Mega Drive exclusive, i.e. Japan exclusive, only for the Mega Drive in Japan. And I've learned over the course of this journey, the Sega journey, that when a company doesn't license a shoot 'em up for either the States or Europe or all the territories, there's a reason.
Right, okay.
And so I've learned that, and it's taken me a while, but but this is one of those games where it was called in the arcade, because it's an arcade port. It was called Super Real Darwin, which cracks me up. I don't know what that means, but it's hilarious. And the idea is that you're supposed to evolve your ship. Get it? Evolution, Darwin, blah blah blah.
Oh, great! I get that now.
So
yeah, you can tell how much time I spent with this game.
It's well, you're not reviewing them in the fashion that I am, so I totally get it. But
thank goodness.
So you have these bubbles that will help you, quote unquote, evolve your ship.
And that's what the DNA bit was all about.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
And so you basically collect these bubbles, and they transform your ship into a slightly different form with a stronger weapon, and your ship can have up to 15 different evolutions, which is pretty crazy. However, only a certain amount, they only last a little bit. Yeah. So it's kind of dumb in that regard. Yeah. There are also, they call them EVOL, EVOL, bubbles there are also bubbles that transform you into different kinds of beasts, but they actually kind of suck and aren't worth getting. So better to avoid those. If you want to play this game at all, this game is about as generic of a shoot 'em up as you can get.
It's horrible to look at.
It's really
because it's gross. Like, it's generic time. Like if, like I said, it wasn't designed. It was just like it just became. It's like if AI made a space shooter from the 90s, this would probably be it. It's not good. It's not designed. It's horrible to look at. There's no color design. There's no continuity between ship and enemy or ship. It's a horrible thing to look at. It's not
when
nice.
People, agreed. And when people criticize the Mega Drive and the graphics, this is the kind of stuff they're talking about.
Yeah.
This is the fodder for the Mega Drive / Genesis haters, is stuff like this.
Yeah.
It really does look as bad as we're saying. You can go on the website, check out the screenshots. There's one screenshot that I got that is actually pretty cool, and it's like you're in this stage where it's kind of like you're in a computer and you're flying over like computer chips, but then at one point you fly over this pink Casio keyboard.
I'm looking at it now.
Yeah, it's ridiculous looking. It doesn't mean anything in the broad sense of the game, but it's kind of neat. But everything else, just it looks bad. It's very generic. It's difficult. It's not fun. We didn't miss anything by this not coming to the States at all, or to the UK. Yeah.
No. Soot says looks very much like a home computer shoot 'em up graphic wise, rather than an arcade conversion. Yeah, it just looks like somebody made it for a school project. It's not good. Josh Dykman, I always thought Super Real Darwin looked pretty flat and lifeless. Your screenshots actually make the Mega Drive version look more appealing than when it was moving. True, it doesn't. It's not even got like a real silky smooth frame rate or anything clever like that. The animations aren't like really detailed or anything. It's just a nasty game. It's like drinking like. If you poured some Coke into a glass and left it like 5 days and then drank it, that's what. Yeah. That's. It's just like, ugh. Like you could maybe drink it, and you maybe would be okay. But do you want to? No.
Your Coke has evolved into some sort of like auto lubricant, where it's just like. It's like, oh, you can't drink it anymore, but it's still useful, kinda, but not really. You shouldn't ingest it. Yeah.
Yeah. Right, we've got kind of a big game next, but we're not going to talk about it loads because one, I didn't play it a lot, and two, I think we're going to talk about it more when we get round to talking about the game after. That'll make more sense in a minute when I say what game this is. But this is Phantasy Star 3 Generations of Doom. Now, peek behind the curtain, we've had a little bit of a gap between Sega does seasons, shall we say?
Yeah.
And Dylan played this game touching a decade ago now. It's not far off a decade ago. And I wasn't going to ask him, what did you think? 'Cause that's not fair. Yeah, so if you want to see what Dylan thought about Phantasy Star 3 Generations of Doom, I would suggest you head over to segadoes.com, check it out, and see how you get on. But I did play about 2 or 3 hours of it, and obviously that is nowhere near enough to get into the massive sprawling JRPGs of any title from the 90s. But what I did play was lifeless and kind of, it's weird because it's generic, which is not something you would say about really a Phantasy Star RPG, but this is and I know in the community this is the one that's like, oh yeah, don't bother with that one. Like 1 and 2, 4, online if you're crazy, but 3 is kind of like you don't have to. Can you muster any thoughts up about Phantasy Star 3, Dylan?
Yeah, I mean, I you're right. It's been about 6.5 years since I played it. I did play through. So it's, as far as I know, it's the first. Okay, I take that back. It's not the first RPG to have multiple endings.
No,
I don't believe, but it is one of the first, and it is the first to take this idea of kind of progressing generationally. So, like, the main character you start off with, at some point, he'll have an option of who he can marry between these two women, and depending on who he marries depends on their offspring, and then you play that offspring in the next part of the game.
I believe that's a big thing in 4. I haven't played 4.
I haven't either. Yeah.
But I believe that becomes like a Phantasy Stars kind of thing in 4.
Okay.
And you play through generations of a royal, like a planet ruler or something. I don't know. But
yeah.
I believe that's what it is. Yeah, it just seemed really generic. I was very disappointed in how it looked.
I will say I enjoyed it more than Phantasy Star 2. What the Phantasy Star community, maybe they're aware of it now, but at the time, they loved Phantasy Star 2 for different aspects of the story, for how big the game was in 1989.
Yeah, it was massive.
Yeah, it's so massive because you grind. That's why it's massive. It's 40 hours of grinding. It is brutal. I can't imagine playing it ever again. Whereas this game, unlike in Phantasy Star 2, you had to grind for experience points and money, whether you wanted to or not. Because every time you recruited a new character, they always started at level 1. So you're like, crap. So you had to level them up, boost them up. In Phantasy Star 3, there's still random battles, but you could just go along like you're moving to the next space, and your characters will level up along the way, and that's it. And that is so much better. It's so much better. The story does get more interesting as you get deeper into the game. I agree. Okay. The first few hours, and I hate it when people say this because I'm like, well, why would I give 30 to 40 hours? Just make it through the first 10. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that.
No.
So I get it, but like for kids back in the day, or for teenagers who spent $80 on this game, you're going to play the whole thing. And I guess it's still not worth it for a lot of Phantasy Star fans, but I thought it was, the first one is still the best that I've played thus far. The third one is definitely a second. It's not great. For whatever reason, the visuals are a severe step backward from the second game.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's really weird. But that being said, the generational aspect of it and the multiple endings, and if you get into it, I could see how you could find a lot of enjoyment. But it's just getting past that first part, because like you said, it's very, very generic. It's like, a princess gets kidnapped and a prince has to go help her and save her. But once you get past that, a lot of stuff opens up. So anyway, there's a lot more to it than that. I'm not going to go into it. Go check out the review.
Check out. So we're gonna plug the website for this one. We're not going to do that for really any games, but for this one, we ain't putting 40 hours into it. So
not again. Check. I did it once. I'm not doing it again. Yeah.
He's done the effort. Now, last game, Dylan.
Last game.
Oh man, there's so much to talk about.
It's a doozy.
Wow. Okay. So we're talking about DJ Boy. Oh yes, DJ Boy. Now, was it called DJ Boy in the States? Not in the States, in Japan. It was.
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was. Okay, I was just interested. I didn't know whether it had one of those clever, colourful Japanese names that they sometimes like. Super Boy Plays Music Game. Or,
yeah, right.
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
It's true.
Okay, so what is DJ Boy? DJ Boy is a side-scrolling beat-em-up, a la Turtles, a la Street Rage, that kind of thing. But the difference is, for some reason, this DJ who I don't actually see ever go anywhere near any musical apparatus, I might be wrong, is on roller skates.
Yep.
And that is kind of the gimmick of the game. If you've ever played it... Now, we came up with a term for this. Did we call it a belt scroller? Belt scroller? I think we used to use that term back like 8-9 years ago.
Okay.
Belt scrolling beat 'em up. That I think that kind of describes this genre. I mean, last week we talked about Dynamite Ducks, and that was a belt scrolling beat 'em up. So yeah, it's a beat 'em up in the vein of Streets of Rage, but you're a goofy dude on rollerblades. Now, the gameplay is generic, not really anything fantastic. You can jump and kick, you can punch, blah blah blah. The thing about this game that stands out for me is just like the atmosphere and the characters you interact with along the way. They are interesting.
This game is bad. First of all, it's bad. Like, the aesthetics are insane, which is what makes you want to kind of keep playing.
Yeah.
Like, what else are they going to throw at me? Not always good. Not always appropriate. In one level, you play a racist caricature of a large black woman.
Yeah.
This is in the American version.
It's pretty much Aunt Jemima. Like, you're just trying to take her out. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's rough. It's like, ooh.
But it's not. I mean, I don't really go in for the whole racism thing, but this isn't it's just a black grandma coming after you. It is a very racist caricature of a black individual that could only come out of Japan, really. I mean, it I know it's a weird thing to say, but it kind of reminds me of the whole controversy, if you can remember, they had about a certain Pokemon. I can't remember what the name was. I think it was Jinx, wasn't it? That had very exaggerated, like cartoonish, stereotypical African American or black African features.
Yep.
Yeah, and like you say, this is in the American version, and she's the first boss.
She's the first boss, I think.
Come across.
So most people made it to her.
Yeah, I did.
You know.
She kicked my ass. I'll give her that. But I got there. And then they have like more tongue-in-cheek like stereotypes. Like I assume that there is it's like a. Do you know what a Chippendale is?
Oh yeah, Chippendale. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that is a thing in the States. Okay. There's like a Chippendale dude with big muscles and little pants on and short shorts and things like that. But yeah, you just interact with some really, really exaggerated characters.
Yeah. And if you can get past all that, the skating, while it is a nice, or it's an interesting
idea.
It's an interesting idea, but it results in terrible hit detection. Like, the hit detection is garbage in this game.
It's like you're playing the version of the level, of Turtles in Time, where you're on the surfboards, but you're playing that all the time. That's the whole game. Is that? Yeah, the hit detection is terrible. It's weird. Even like the main bulk of the enemies are just really weirdly caricatured. They're just odd. They've got a big bulging head. It's not a very. I mean, technically, it's a pretty game because there's a lot of detail in the sprites and animations and things like that. But aesthetically, it's awful. It's a very ugly. There's lots of colours in the game, but none of them are colourful. They're not used in the right way. The palette's very odd. There's again the DJ thing I don't get, because you collect. It's like they even had an opportunity, like a DJ, maybe you'd collect like records or CD. I don't think many people had CDs in the '90s, but you know that could have been an option as a pickup. But no, you collect money.
Right. Well, I believe this is just in the American version. But one thing that I thought was amazing is that the character's name is Donald J. Boy.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So it might not be a DJ then.
He might not be a DJ. But in the arcade version, it's a 2-player game, and you play as either Bob or Tom. Which Bob and Tom, I believe, was a famous talk show here in the States.
Okay.
But I don't know if it was around during this game's time. I know it was around in like the early 2000s. But yeah, Bob and Tom, I was like, really? I'm like, I wonder if that is referencing the old show. But Donald J. Boy is not in the arcade version. And in the arcade, you're out to rescue your boombox. That's the goal.
Oh.
So I think there's just a handful of changes that don't make any sense.
Because you're rescuing a girl in this one, aren't you?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
it's we haven't had many good games today, Dylan.
I was gonna say this has been a pile of
This has not been a good collection.
No.
One interesting comment here from Brett Brown. I rented this one pretty early on after getting my Genesis. It was hard, but somehow I managed to go on a run and blew through the game without dying. That is up there with, beating Elden Ring. I loved beat 'em ups back in the day, and even then only thought this one was okay. I actually never really thought about it much once I returned to it. Also, I didn't remember it being so racist, but it is. That's me putting that in. It is racist.
Right.
I mean, I know they licensed up her skin for the US version. Did they really? So it was darker? My goodness. Wow. But I looked up a screenshot and it was still pretty bad. Apparently in the Japanese version, she attacks by farting on you. Or maybe I did play the Japanese version because she was farting on me. But for the US, they replaced it with her throwing donuts. Oh no, I definitely played the Japanese version then because she was puffing away. Yeah, that was another weird thing. Like, you just didn't realise how people were going to attack you. Like, yeah, you had this, like, big lady coming after you and she just, I'm just going to hit me with... I thought, oh, okay, here comes the frying pan. Or here comes the rolling pin, or I don't know, anything. And no, she like turns around, lifts her skirt up, and starts farting everywhere. And it's like, oh, okay, we're doing this now.
Yeah.
Didn't fit with the tone of the game, what they were going for, or anything like that. Even the music was bad for a game called DJ Boy. It was like, okay, it just didn't work. This game, at all.
No, bad
game. So yeah, that's what we've got for you this week. Was a pile of bad games. Hope you enjoyed it. And but actually, next time we've got some pretty interesting stuff to talk about. Haven't we, Dylan?
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, we do. We do. There's for sure better games, but man, I didn't realize I hit like a wall with some of these. I mean, again, I liked Afterburner 2 and Phantasy Star 3 more than most people, I guess, but the bulk of these games were not terrible. My friends. Yeah.
So hopefully next time we can hit some gems. So until then, Sega, Dylan.
Sega.